the Centennial Mills is a good site that could provide that additional green space for these thousands of new people, citizens that are moving into our neighborhood. Second, as you probably are aware, this site is part of the Portland Harbor area. And as you know, there's going to be $1 billion spent cleaning up the Portland Harbor basically from our citizens and from our industry along the harbor. To me, it's a crying shame that we don't have any access to utilize this new clean harbor water that we have. In fact, I would think this could be a place where we can celebrate the cleaning of the Portland Harbor and allow people access and maybe a water park or different types of water activities to celebrate this clean water that we're going to be having within the Portland Harbor. And then lastly, one of the minor things that people don't realize is that this is a good thing that the city of Portland has done. In fact, a fantastic thing. Last year, the Bureau of Transportation re-striped Nato Parkway to just allow one lane of cars, and then they have a bikeway. And right now, that bikeway is probably the best greenway that we have in the city of Portland. I ride my bicycle east side, west side. I use it quite a bit. I probably ride maybe a couple hundred miles every month. And quite frankly, NATO right now is the easiest, safest way to go from northwest Portland to downtown. Now, in order to make that, in the initial framework plan, they had a bridge crossing NATO Parkway from the Fields Park to Centennial Mills. And I think that would be an important addition to the Centennial Mills development site to allow residents and pedestrians to go across the railroad tracks and the old parkway into the Centennial Mills. And plus it would facilitate bicycle transportation. All, people from all northwest Portland to come to the Fields Park, cross the bridge, get out to the old parkway and get downtown very fast and safe.
Yes, my name is Mike, I represent Lightning Super Watchdog. I want to make it very clear, I don't represent any developers.
Sorry, no problem. Hey guys, so the discussion today is concerning just a property in the downtown area. If you guys want more information of what's being discussed today, you can on YouTube look up eGov, that's EGOV space PDX. That's the live stream of today's city council meeting, and you'll be able to find the information on what they're talking about. I can't talk inside the meeting, so any questions are going to go unanswered.
Very creative ideas based upon experience of many, many years to get to that place. For whatever reason, Patrick Quinton could not put this deal together, and you are a disgrace. You may not like me to say that, but you are a disgrace. This deal needed to be put together with harsh development. The city needed to come up with additional funding, be a little creative. The developer is there. Late Art DeMuro wanted this to happen, preserve some of the buildings, and this is the direction it should go. Now we have the demolition costs to maybe back out of the deal to get a little bit closer on the numbers. Again, create a masterpiece here, somebody that knows how to do that and respect the public and respect the surrounding area and the river and everything else that we have here. The horses, move on, your time has passed, and quit, in my opinion, by having those horses, devaluing the property intentionally for somebody else to step in position. As you know, harsh development did not want to have the horses in place. I absolutely agree with them. I hope they end up with this project. And again, in the world of real estate, karma. You ended up with that U.S. Post Office building by shifting this deal to the side. Karma. You ended up getting TIF money for the multi-family housing facility by TPI, Bud Clark Commons. Karma can come back around and get you in the end. I would suggest you treat the developer fair with his creative ideas and allow him to proceed forward on this project and do what needs to be done here and create a masterpiece, which I think he is the only one in this city that can do and has the money and the backing and the experience to get the job done. If the city doesn't mess around with him and throw a wrench into this game to jump over that post office, jump over that overpriced Troutdale property, and Patrick Quinton, enjoy your retirement. You are a disgrace.
Morning, Commissioners and Mayor Wheeler. My name is David Dysert. I'm a member of the Public Neighborhood Association's Planning and Transportation Committee. And as such, I do appreciate your comment, Mayor Wheeler, about outreach, because I think this is not a opportunity. This is a pet project for the neighborhood, regional size significance, a rich history. Check a lot. Let's treat that further on this. If you haven't heard of the rich history of the site, we've lost a lot of our experience the last side of it. It's also a regional significant site for humanity. So I think you this project and that site, it's really beyond that. I'd like to read the letter that the Public Neighborhood Association has submitted to you. Dear Mayor and City Commissioners, the Public Neighborhood Association would like to remind you of the public goals for Centennial Mills and ask that they be folded into any future development through either the sales agreement and or title of property. The city and public have spent collectively too much time, effort, and money, this last vestige of Portland's history, to give up on the goals that have driven the project from the beginning. The 5 redevelopment principles from the 2006 Centennial Mills Framework Plan are: provide open space, capture history, define a community focal point, strengthen connections, embrace sustainability. The site was originally bought to become a public park by City Council. It would be a shame if it ended up a privatized enclave on the river, especially as it is one of the last places where Portlanders can connect to the river that runs through our city. We urge you to make sure these principles are upheld in the future of the site. We urge you to make sure the public is involved with any development of the site through the master plan process as outlined in city code. And then if I can put on my public citizen hat and speak as just a citizen. Lately we hear a lot about Portland losing its soul, and it's not really about rent prices. It's the realization that we've lost leadership and vision. We don't talk about ideas anymore, we talk about budgets. We used to have it. We traded a proposed interstate for light rail. We removed a highway right in front yard. We built a transit mall and implemented a cap on parking spaces of all things. And we built a living room. Pioneer Courthouse Square. That wasn't easy. You know what was easy? The business folks wanted that block to be a parking garage. Think about that. Think about what our downtown would be without its living room. Portland built a public square when no one was building public squares. They were building private shopping malls. And it's not just about the bricks, it's about the idea, a place for the public, a place for everyone. Oregon is one of only 2 states that guarantee public access to its entire coastline. We should think about our river in the same terms. One of the strongest planning principles from that era is to celebrate the river. The Centennial Mills site has been a constant feature in those plans for decades. This site is about celebrating our great river, the very reason the city exists. And the history of that city is all but forgotten, as soft wheat has given way to hard hats. Portland will be judged by the stewardship of our assets. By willful neglect, we've allowed this great asset to literally decay into ruin. Now we have 1 building left. Centennial's Mill is not a Pearl District project, it's a regional site of significance. Are we going to lose this treasure and wall off the river with yet another apartment building built on a budget to maximize return on investment? Are we going to lose this treasure? Yes, that would be the easy thing to do. Do the hard thing, capture history, provide open space, direct access to the river. Please don't let our city be reduced to a pro forma spreadsheet. I humbly ask you to provide leadership and vision before it's too late. Thank you.
Excellent statement, thank you. And shameless plug, I hope you will have a chance at some point to hear the speech I'm going to give at the City Club on Friday. Shameless plug, I apologize.
I didn't know you were speaking on Friday at the City Club.
I am speaking on Friday at the City Club.
That has something to do with the State of the City address?
Indeed it does, Commissioner. Friday, City Club, and it will be online.
Just so you know, I want to say to the public that I'm going to be on a plane to Chicago at that time, which was booked many months ago, so I'm not going to see my son. No, I'm not going to cancel it.
Very good. Well, thank you for your testimony. Next up.
The last person who signed up is Sarah Iannarone.
Sarah, are you here? There she is. Good morning.
Thanks, Bob.
Madam Mayor.
Good morning, good to see you all. I'm here, thank you for all your service. I actually worked with PBC a few years ago to rethink the strategic plan. I know that equity's at the top of their agenda, and if you've been to some of their outreach lately, they are doing a really good job, I think, trying to get folks engaged. The Broadway corridor community meeting that they held was very diverse and very robust, so I want to give them a shout out for that. But, one of the things that I'm here about is on behalf of Oregon Harbor of Hope. It's a nonprofit organization that's come together to supplement the public sector activities to address our housing and homelessness crisis. And one of the things that they're requesting is that you consider converting in the short term the MPU, the horse facility barn, to R2D2 facility temporarily. The folks at R2D2 are very concerned about that April 1st deadline looming. And we're thinking about eviction and where these folks can go. And it's our understanding that the structure there is sound and habitable, and that there's gonna be a significant time lag between now and when construction's gonna be potentially started there. And so this is actually a very viable option for moving R2D2 in the short term. Oregon Harbor of Hope has agreed to convert this facility with the necessary amenities to house R2D2 if the city is agreeable to this. For up to 18 months, with taking a ballot if you're interested. I think this is something that's very important. I mean, we can talk about relocating horses, but we have people sleeping outdoors. And so if we have properties like this available, we have short-term prices at hand. We need to be very creative, especially on taking up our private sector partners who are willing to help us pay for some of this, to get those folks off the street. We're potentially gonna have between 80 and 100 people additional sleeping outdoors if R2D2 is evicted. So I would encourage you to consider this. Thank you for listening to me, and keep up the good work.
Sarah, since you're here, can I ask a follow-up question? So, when Oregon Harbor of Hope had its sites on Terminal 1 North, one of the things that we did is we took a look at the comprehensive plan, we took a look at the zoning code, we identified some barriers. I'm not familiar with whatever the zoning is at the site that you've recommended. Do you know whether there are any comprehensive plan or zoning issues we have to address as part of that relocation?
I do not. And I also encourage you to use the state of emergency to suspend those temporarily, especially while we're just looking for a place for people to sleep in the interim for a permanent location for R2D2. This would just be a temporary site for R2D2 while we find a permanent location.
Thank you for coming. I actually thought of that as well. And when you say that the proposed offering to build facilities or to do any facilities, what do you mean by that?
Similar to the Terminal 1 site, we would put in for the renovations that are necessary to make that a temporary shelter. So there's nothing permanent, but there are like temporary cots and things like that and other things to make that into a stop that Oregon Harbor of Hope is willing to work with the city to ensure that they're there for the folks to relocate there.
Thank you, but just so you know, that doesn't fit the Right to Dream model, that they don't, that they're not looking for indoor shelter. So I think it's an interesting concept to explore. It would not be any kind of thing that would be going inside.
Well, but R2D2 does have infrastructure, there's shelving. I mean, basically what they said is converting it with the necessary amenities that R2D2 would require. This is about Oregon Harbor of Hope helping R2D2 relocate based on what they need. So it's not superimposing a shelter model that Oregon Harbor of Hope sees it, but rather giving them the resources that they need in lieu of public resources.
Thank you for your testimony.
You're welcome.
Good morning.
Charles Bridge Crane Johnson.
Bridge Crane.
And that, my dear friend Mayor Wheeler, is why she had my vote instead of you about 11 months ago. $26 million that we somehow magically need to recoup while we deny R2D2 100 people a place to sleep. You know, occasionally we come up with interesting things. We did something with the Erickson Apartments. But wouldn't it be a shame if a real audit of the City of Portland and the Portland Development Commission showed we had actually outlaid more cash for the sheltering of horses than of human beings. And we can make all kinds of excuses that, oh, well, Home Forward does that, and the Portland Housing Bureau is out of the direct shelter, direct housing business. But when the Portland Development Commission comes up here and says, we've been futzing around with this precious industrial land to the tune of $26 million, and as former Mayor candidate Ms. Anarone pointed out, just in the last few months we've said, hey, homeless people, you can't sleep at Terminal 1 North because bureaucratic BS. We can't find an appropriate shelter coordinating management person to do it for you. Or, oh my God, we gotta protect the industrially zoned land. But here, I don't see, I mean, a flour mill is pretty industrial. But now, because we need our $26 million back, it doesn't have to stay industrial. It can be mixed use and it can be residential. So, you know, when extremely poor and homeless people, now I understand, one thing that's positive here is Nick Fish, maybe he has a dream that somehow we can recoup the $26 million and still have projects on that site that are 100% below MFI housing. That would be awesome. I don't know, maybe it can be done. But that's really what we should be looking at. When Lightning Super Watchdog testified, he talked about a premier project. But for God's sakes, if we can put rich people in that ugly piece of crap Death Star on the other side of the river, we can build an ugly Death Star and let some.
And since I was part of the Parks Bureau, we did that, and that was a very difficult part to do because it required a lot of public subsidy, a lot of work with developers, and it was an expensive. It was a wonderful park, and it's built to meet specifications. Thank you. It required an enormous public subsidy, obviously. As part of the design for that park, there was a placeholder bridge put in that would have basically ran from the dog run across the tracks to Centennial Mills. And for some reason, it was part of the design, but there was no way to fund it, so it was shelved. Since someone has raised that, I think I know the answer, but could you address the status of that bridge?
Yeah, absolutely. So the bridge, I think, was estimated to add about $2 million to the cost of the Centennial Mills build-out. So it goes on the list of things that I think we will want to talk to the public about and to our bureau partners and private partners about, what do we see as the vision for the site and what resources do we have, both public and private, to put to work at the site to achieve those visions.
Thank you. What's the timeline? The resolution talks about building up towards some kind of development plan for the site. And so it's 2018, 2019. And so when might you go out with an RFP or an RFQ?
So probably in late 2017 or early 2018. I think we do, want to do robust community outreach. This conversation has been really important in terms of being able to set expectations for the community. There's been a lot of support for keeping the MPU at this site, and so we wanted to be able to know what the future was in order to be able to re-engage with the RFP.
All right, so Mayor, I'd like to offer an amendment. I think it's a friendly amendment, but Kimberly will tell us if it's friendly or not. It's at the resolution, it's an additional be it further resolved. City Council directs PDC and the Portland Housing Bureau to review all options for maximizing the development of housing affordable for people earning between 0 and 60% of median family income, and to report their recommendations to us.
So it is your opinion that that is
Yes.
not a substantive? No,
Yes.
I'm very good. So
Yes.
then, unless I heard you correctly, is that done?
I have a couple
Please.
questions. Certainly heard about Centennial Mills over the years, and, but I think the whole process predates most of us who are sitting up here. So if you could city's possession? Was it purchased specifically for park use? When did the zoning change, et cetera? Just kind of wrap up some of the loose ends that were left by
Sure.
commoners.
Sure. So it was acquired back in 2000, and it was acquired to be open space. So it was anticipated to be the terminus of the 3 parks in the Pearl District, to be completely open space. So that answers that question. Then what happened is the MPU was placed on it as an interim measure. The neighborhood kind of grew around it. If you imagine what the Pearl District looked like back in 2000, you had kind of much fewer people kind of living in the neighborhood, and so, yeah. Yeah, so as folks moved into the neighborhood and started working in the neighborhood, in 2005, it's when council gave the Planning Bureau and PDC the directive to complete a framework plan that looked at options for both open space and development on the site that allowed for preservation, particularly of the flour mill. And so there's a number of scenarios that are contemplated in the framework plan, a number of development scenarios, and it landed on these 5 principles as the guiding principles for development. We went out with a solicitation based on those. The challenges to the solicitation is, the most immediate one, it needed a $37 million subsidy, and we have $20 million in the budget, and so we've often had a conversation about what are the trade-offs, because we've made commitments to Old Town Chinatown, we have commitments on the post office site, and ultimately, kind of it would come at the cost of other investments that we're making in the River District.
Okay. And, I mean, how would you respond to members of the public who just gave commentary, feeling that the public wasn't engaged and wasn't involved in this decision-making process, and feel perhaps cheated out of a park or green space?
So, so what I would start by saying is that the decision today does not preclude having the space be an open space. So the decision that we were bringing forward both to the Pearl District was the analysis that was done by GBD at a high level, just to show the development feasibility of whether you keep the MPU or not. So it could still be an open space. The conversation with the Pearl District actually was meant to happen in January, and it was snowed out, so it really was unfortunate that it was only a few days before. That wasn't our intention. So, you know, we will have additional conversations. We need to talk to our Bureau partners about what resources they might have to put to work here as well, and we look forward to that engagement.
Thank you.
Out of the abundance of caution, I think by legal counsel that we should still take a vote on Commissioner Fish's amendment. He's moved it. Is there a second?
Second.
Call the roll on the amendment.
Fritz.
Aye.
Fish.
Aye.
Saltzman.
Aye.
Udaley.
Aye.
Wheeler.
Aye. And so if I could just ask a clarifying, sorry, the amendment is on the table. If I could just ask a clarifying question to whether the answer you just gave to Commissioner Daly. So the questions and issues people just raised about green space in the development proposals that will be judged and will be vetted to the public, that is still very much on the table.
It is still very much.
It's very good. And I just want to say, since there were some people here who said they felt unhappy that the harsh development proposal fell by the wayside, I think it's well known that I'm one of those people. I actually thought it was a very visionary proposal, and I particularly liked the access that was being provided to the waterway. And I concur with those who acknowledge this isn't just another development site. This truly is one of our last waterfront parcels, and I hope we have a vision that it's big enough that we can all be proud of it and take advantage of some of the opportunities that a waterfront parcel offers. So I'll certainly be keeping a close watch on that. Any further questions, comments? Please call the roll.
Fritz.
Well, thank you for this very clear presentation. Mayor, I think that Ms. Diana Rowan has solved the problem of getting public attention on this site by saying that it could perhaps be used for Right to Dream too. So I'm sure that there'll be many more people participating if that's even being thought about. This is a concept plan. I support the concept. I particularly like the step down to the river, 4 stories maximum, the greenway and the access to it is obviously going to be very key. I do support not having the amount of patrol unit on this site. It's very much a waste of valuable real estate. We're not deciding about the amount of patrol unit today. That'll be part of the budget discussion. I believe that it's now sometimes something that, although many people appreciate it, we just can't afford it in this day and age for multiple reasons. But that, as I say, that discussion will happen in the budget process. I want to be very clear that there is no money available in parks for a huge expenditure here. And the $5.5 million that was mentioned for greenway development hopefully will be enough to cover all of that. But if we start adding multiple other things like docks and river access, etc., down to the water, it may get much more expensive. And given that we have 3 beautiful parks in the Pearl, Tanner Springs, Jameson Square, and the Fields is very close to this. As long as we have the access greenways between the buildings, maybe moving them around a bit to make that all one consolidated space should be considered. It seems to me that we can get good development, which will give significant affordable housing and then other valuable property, and have the green space as well. So I'm very much in support of the proposal. Aye.
Fish.
Thanks for a good presentation today. So, once upon a time, I hoped we could maintain most of the historic structures and figure out a way to pencil out. In fact, it was Mayor Tom Potter who was a great champion of that, who thought it could even be a center for art. And there was talk of a museum and all kinds of amenities. Times change, markets change, city needs change. I'm pleased that this resolution does not foreclose a broader community conversation. And I agree with the folks from the Pearl who came in and said it should be a citywide conversation. One of the challenges of urban renewal is it's a source of money that's been robust for us to do things, but it's limited to 15% of the city. And I think we have to the extent possible, always think citywide, even though we're spending within the district, and that is sometimes creates tension within districts. We do have 3 world-class parks, which we've made enormous investments in. And if I lived in that neighborhood, I understand why having more green spaces along the river would be very appealing. Whether we can afford that and balance it with our other needs is part of the process that you will address. I join with my colleague, Commissioner Fritz, though, in saying that we have a chance to have a world-class greenway and to begin to think about connecting, because we're building out infrastructure along the river there, and to the individual who testified about a post-Superfund future, yeah, we hope the river is a healthier place for everyone, and there should be river access. It is very important to me that if housing is a part of the plan, that we go beyond the inclusionary housing policy and put as much affordable housing as possible. One of the things that we're proud of in the River District is when you walk around the community, it's very hard to tell what is the affordable housing. In fact, I brought visitors in and said, just tell me which of these buildings is 100% affordable. Tell me which one is built by the housing authority. Tell me which was the region. Most people can't tell. And that's because we've insisted that the quality of the housing within that district be of a similar kind to everything else, because we welcome everybody into the district. And we did set a pretty high marker for the ratio of affordable housing. And this may be our last great chance to sort of reach some of the ratios that we pledged, or maybe even exceed them. So I would like the Housing Bureau to be creative in looking about how we can capture the value. And to someone who said we don't need another gated community or sort of privileged enclave, we turn that around. I think if you are a low-income household in this community, you have every right to be able to live on the river along with other people. So let's flip that critique and make it a welcome place for everybody, so that it's affordable for people that can have one of the great addresses and views overlooking the river. And finally, we don't have the money to do another park, and I want to compliment Commissioner Fritz. There's whole swaths of East Portland that don't have parks. And Commissioner Fritz has said we are going to build out equity in East Portland as a priority using systems development charge money generated elsewhere. And there's a lot of people, particularly low-income Portlanders, that don't enjoy parks the way people do in the inner core of the city where we have more parks. And I applaud her for prioritizing parks for people in places that they haven't existed. But that means dedicating most of the discretionary dollars to do that, and it comes at the cost of other kinds of things. And finally, as to the bridge, it would be nice to have a safe access other than people just going down and crossing the rail tracks. But that's a $2 or $3 million amenity, and I think it's highly unlikely you're gonna have the resources for it. So as you do the planning, I think it is important to think, how do people connect safely? And that is an active railway. So how do you get across, whether you're by walking or biking or whatever? And make sure it's safely connected, because we want the river connected to the rest of the river district. Good hearing, I appreciate the presentation, and I vote aye.
Saltzman,
Well, I'm more than happy to support this framework plan. Although I would openly question, I guess sometimes, I mean, the problem with Centennial Mills is really that there's been too much designing it on high with our hopes and aspirations, and nothing's penciled yet. We spent $26 million. We asked Harsh Investment to come up with $37 million of their own money. They walked away. So, you know, in my mind, something's got to give to make something happen here. And, you know, I do wonder, I think there was interesting testimony about the status of the flour mill. And, you know, I've been inside the flour mill at one time. You know, I do wonder, you know, I appreciate history as much as anybody else, but if this becomes an albatross around everything happening here, then I think we have to take a, you know, a look at whether the flour mill needs to be designed out and something else happened there, something catalytic. So that's just one thought I have, but I do want to go forward, but it does seem like we keep running into loggerheads on something happening here, and so hopefully something will spark here and happen. Aye.
you David.
Thanks for the presentation. First, I want to start off by saying that I certainly sympathize with some of the issues brought forward by the public today. I do believe that the city needs to do a better job getting information out to the public and engaging the public in these conversations. I also share concern around site preservation and preserving or creating green space and providing river access. And I've been thinking about the comment made by one of the community members about this being beyond the neighborhood, and that cuts both ways, isn't it? Commissioner Fish mentioned we already have a series of lovely parks in the Pearl District, while some of our communities are lacking. We're in the middle of an unprecedented housing crisis, so maximizing the resources we have left to create housing is important. And I want to mention that I lived a few blocks away from the Pearl District from the late 80s until about 2007. So I've certainly been witness to the changes there. I was priced out of that neighborhood along with hundreds of artists and other former occupants of the Pearl, which there were lots before that was developed. We lost an extraordinary kind of folk art site in the Lovejoy Columns. So the point is, the city's gone through a lot of changes. I haven't even touched on what's happened in Northeast Portland. So I think we do need to keep a broader perspective in mind and set our priorities and think about what kind of city we want to live in. And it should come as no surprise that my priority is affordable housing. So I'm happy to vote aye.
So I'll just keep my comments brief. I want to support what Commissioner Fritz said that was seconded by Commissioner Fish with regard to the order of things. There's no question that we need to address equities in park services in East Portland, but I do not want to foreclose opportunities to reinvigorate our waterway. I think we've turned our backs on the Willamette for too long. We've made a lot of critical infrastructure investments. The three former current city commissioners who've been here a while have made significant investments in cleanup of both river restoration opportunities, water quality through the Big Pipe project and other infrastructure projects. And so my point here isn't necessarily that we're gonna put in piers and swimming facilities today. What I just don't want us to do is wall off that opportunity either for us, if the resources become available, and certainly not for future generations, because we have certainly seen as we look at the riverscape today, that a lot of those opportunities that could have been aren't, because those opportunities were foreclosed before we ever got here. So that's my larger point with regard to the riverfront and water access. I'll stop there and just say, aye,